Morning, everybody. Hope you had a good weekend. Welcome to the Monday call. Good time to, if you got questions, concerns, things going well, things going poorly, now's a good time to bring them up. Everybody will benefit. So if you've got things, go ahead and type those in, or if you're on a mic, go ahead and raise your hand, and Missy will get you opened up. So just a couple things to cover before we get to the main topic today. First thing is, what do the big guys think? So what do you guys think that the big guys think, the guys that manage huge amounts of money? Do they think that the stock market's going to go up or down or sideways, or what are they looking at the next decade? Guys like Jerry Grantham, who manages $97 billion, and Bill Gross, who's in charge of $270 billion under management. What do they think is going to happen over the next 10 years? What's the market going to average? What do you guys think? And these guys are, and first of all, can we agree these guys are not dummies? Bill Gross says going down. Yeah, and Robert Arnott, one of the most decorated equity writers and researchers, the third one. Basically, 4 to 6% a year over the next decade. So, how does that compare to what we offer our clients? Because that's 4 to 6%. Is that a 4%, 4 to 6% volatile, or 4 to 6% nice and steady? That's volatile, right? That means we could have years where the market's up 20%, but then they're saying that the market will be down whatever has to be down to get back to that 4 to 6%. So the point you should take from this is that the big guys, and you should be talking to your clients about this, the big guys are saying this. What are our income benefit riders? What are they paying? And what kind of volatility is an income benefit rider? None. So if you can get the same amount of return with no volatility and with guarantees, does that make more sense or less sense than being in a more volatile investment? So now, why are they saying 4 to 6%? What kind of reasons do you think they're giving for why we're going to see a 4 to 6%? Where did almost all the growth, where did almost all the money come from for people to buy things and people to invest in the 1980s and the 1990s? We got two things happen. The market went up, so people need money to invest. And the second thing is that people bought tons of stuff, which drove the drove profitability up. Where did it come from? Market returns have been greater than the GDP, according to Bill Gross' article. Yeah, they have been way greater than, from the real estate market, Bill. Exactly right. And as Eric points out, the returns have been greater than GDP for way too many years, and it's going to catch up now. Everybody was taking what? Home equity loans, because their houses kept going up in value, so they took home equity loans and remodeled their houses and went on vacation and bought bigger cars and bought furniture and did this, that, and the other thing. How long before we're going to get to a point where people can afford to do that with their houses again? And once we get to the point where they're able to afford to do that with their houses again, how many will emotionally want to do that with their houses again after seeing friends, neighbors, and relatives lose their houses because of that very thing? So if nobody's buying stuff because there's no extra money floating around there, if people are saving more money than they used to do, and I mean savings in savings account, not in their 401ks, because the youngsters right now are not touching the market at all. It's only the older people that are touching the market because they lived through the 80s where they still think that you can get an average of a 12% rate of return on your accounts. The youngsters know better than that. So that's why they're saying it's 4 to 6. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons, and so they didn't just pull these numbers out of their back pocket. There's all sorts of reasons why they and many other people who are in the know think we're going to see very low returns over the next 10 years. So what can you do about that? Well, that leads into the next slide. This slide right here, put out by American Equity, shows how their what product is this? Their Equity Index 5 has performed since 1998. You can see the green there is how it's done. You can see the minimum guaranteed contract value compared to what the market has done. So this is a fantastic piece that you can be using. If you call up Jason, he can get you the PDF for this. I would highly recommend that you go down, take this, go down to your local Staples, get it put on a 3x4 poster board, put it on an easel in your lobby. This speaks volumes. I mean, how many people would like this speaks volumes. When I first saw this, I was like, this cannot be legal. I can't believe that they could be showing this to people. But it's completely legal, and you can get your own. So call Jason, get the PDF of this. I guess they can even, if you there's a methodology that you can actually even get it branded to your company name. So this is really an unbelievable piece to put in front of people, and it's something that will sell itself. So I was going to see if there's another comment here. Tremendous. Sorry about this. I'm reading a comment here. Oh, yeah, we have a comment in 78, 401ks came from Donald O'Connor. That in 1978, 401ks came to existence. So tons of people were putting money into their 401ks, and now we're getting to a point where people are starting to pull their money out, and are even being forced to pull their money out with RMDs, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of reasons why we're looking at a 4 to 6% going forward. So, but this piece right here, I think is a great piece for you to be showing people. It sells itself. So, what I wanted, any questions, comments before we get started on the main topic today? So call Jason to get your hands on the PDF of that, and then he'll tell you how you can get it branded to your company name. Okay, so no comments. Super. What I want to talk about today is a book called Neuromarketing, and it's written by, if you see down here in the corner, Patrick Renoir, or whatever it is, and Christopher Morin. And it's about how people buy. So in a nutshell, guys, how do people buy? Do they buy? Well, let's see if anybody knows this. I mean, I think we've been told it, so I don't want to give it away before I have a few guesses. What kind of things make people buy? What are the pressures? What are the forces that make people buy? Emotion, Bill. Thank you. That's right. Emotion, emotion, emotion. And that's what neuromarketing is about, is how people buy emotionally. See, they buy from the old brain. You can see there's three brains here. There's the new brain, and by new brain meaning it was the last piece of the brain that was developed. The midbrain was the second piece. The old brain is the first part of the brain that was developed. It's called the reptilian brain, right? So that's the old brain, and then our brains developed midbrain, which was emotions, and then we finally developed the new brain, which is data processing. So guess how we decide to buy? Do you think it's best based on new brain, midbrain, or old brain? It's based on the old brain. And now Eric points out, yeah, we buy emotionally and then justify via data. So we buy emotionally with the old brain, and then we justify it with data. So what are the 6 stimuli to the old brain? Well, self-centered. That should go without saying. The first and only thing we're concerned about is what? Ourselves. So when you hear me talking about marketing, etc., everything is always pointed where? At them and their benefits. Not about what we can do, but about what they need. So the first part is self-centered. The second is contrast. And you hear me talk about this a lot. We do not like subtleties. And if you think about it, what are the first things they teach you in kindergarten? Contrast. Our brains are hardwired for contrast. We love contrast. Think about it. When in kindergarten, we were taught what? If you say up, what's the first thing that pops into our mind? Down. If we say hot, what's the first thing that pops into our mind? Cold. We're wired that way. And we can only think, or we think best that way. If you think about it, when you go to the optometrist, do they put a bunch of lenses in front of you, 15 lenses in front of you, say, okay, which one of these lenses is the best? Is that how they do it? Or do they put you in front of one of those goggles and they go, which one's better, the first or second? The second. Flip, flip. Which one's better? First or second? Second. Flip, flip. Which one's better? First or second? First. Flip, flip. They only compare 2 at a time. That's how we are wired. So you'll hear me talk about this when we're selling to people. How many... and Jeff, you can chirp in here. When somebody goes in front of a client and tries to let the client decide which of the 5 products or which of the 5 solutions is better, what's the likelihood? And you've seen that happen, haven't you? Where they give them the whole smorgasbord of things that they can do, and what happens?
They just get confused. They just throw up their hands and say, well, I can't decide, so we're just going to keep doing what we're doing.
You should never have give a client more than 2 choices. And how close do I want those choices? Do I want them to be very similar to each other or black and white different? I want them to be black and white different, so it's easy for them to make a choice. Now, so we say you shouldn't have too many. What if you only give them 1 choice? Is that good? So what do you think, guys? If I only give them 1 choice, is that good? It's a trick question. What if I only give them 1 choice? Too few, Bill. Why too few, Bill? They want a choice. Well, and here's my trick question. You guys are right. Here's my trick question. When I give them 1 choice, they still have 2 choices, which are what? If I only give them 1 choice, they have 2 choices. What are those 2 choices? Yes or no, exactly. Accept or reject. That's exactly right. So I never want to give them just 1 choice. I want to give them 2 choices, and they should be black and white difference. Tangible output. Make what you are offering them tangible or concrete. Unfortunately, we're in the business of what? Selling the tangible or the intangible? We sell the intangible, so we need to be very, very aware of this, of how we can make our intangible tangible. Alpha and Omega, they only remember the first thing you say and the last thing you say, and nothing in between. Where this really comes into play is during our events or our workshops. Visual stimuli. If you think about it, can you stare, or how are our eyes? Well, first of all, how many of you realize that our brains are hardwired for visual stimuli versus any other types of stimuli? And, well, you know what? Before I jump into that, I'm going to wait till we get to a different slide and get more into that. But our brains are wired simply for visual stimuli only. So everything that you show them should be visually stimulating, not just via audio or via facts and figures, because facts and figures are not visual stimuli. And then, obviously, the 6th stimuli of the old brain is emotion. We buy emotionally. So let's walk through this. First thing is I'm kind of a big deal. We're all self-centered, so we'll go through these one at a time. I'm kind of a big deal. So, what does that tell us? It tells us that when we're talking to people, or more importantly, having them talk to us, it's always about them, their concerns. It's not about, you probably heard of me tell you this before. Am I a big fan of you telling people all about your qualifications? Hey, I'm a CFP, I'm a blah, 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 blah. No, Bill, you're right. No, because they don't really give a rat's patootie about you. But guess why advisors like to talk about that? Because the advisor thinks they're kind of a big deal. But the client doesn't care about that. The client wants to know, what's in this for me? What do you have for me? So this should be constantly in your mind. And you should write these 3 things down. Write these 3 questions down. What's your point? See, these are things that are going through their minds. What's your point? How does that, how does that affect me? So what's your point? The other question is, why does that matter to me? And the other point is, so what? So what's your point? Why does that matter? And so what? You have to understand, that's what's going through their heads constantly. So if what's coming out of your mouth, or the point you're trying to make, doesn't address one of those things, you've got a problem, because people are extremely self-centered. Okay, the second thing is contrast. Again, we talked about that quite a bit, which is 2 choices. Always 2 choices, and the choices should be between the white and the black, not these shades in between. You shouldn't have shades of difference. White and black, you want it as close to white and black as you can possibly get. And your examples have to be concrete. So what do I tell you about when I'm doing a story? So here's a story for you guys. There was this carpenter, and at age 33, he decided he just wanted to be a public speaker instead. And when he started to speak in public, the powers that be really got mad at him, didn't like what he said, so they killed him. So what story was that? What story was that, guys? Probably the most well-known story in Western society. But was that concrete, or was that an outline? Was that a thumbnail sketch? Or, I mean, could you possibly learn anything from that story the way I told it? Would that move nations the way I told it? Would that move, I mean, your story has to be concrete. So, when we're talking about the importance of the power of attorney and getting run over by a bus and whatever, how much detail do I go into in that story? I mean, I talk about the wires and the tubes coming out of me, and my wife comes in and she's like, oh, I mean, I want to paint a picture. These people need to be seeing a movie in their head. An outline of a story is not concrete. An outline of a story is intangible. It is theoretical. The story is concrete. So anytime you're making a point, you want to make sure that it is as concrete as possible, that they get your point. Now, the question is, how do you know they get your point, guys? How do you know they get your point? The only way you know they get their point, you get your point, is what? Is if they tell you they get their point. And how much detail do you want them to tell you it back? Extreme detail. I don't want them to give me an outline back either, because then I don't know whether they get it or not. So always be thinking concrete. When you're telling a story, make sure it's a technicolor story, not just an outline of a story. The Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. They only remember the beginning, and they only remember the end. So if you, this is really important. I mean, it's important all the time, but it's really important when we're doing our events, because we have to realize that if we make tons of good points in between the beginning and the end, they don't remember those. So you're going to need to either summarize all of those points, or make sure that the last point you cover is the coup de grace, the one that's going to get them to make that appointment. I always remember that. I know that you know all this stuff backwards and forwards, but this is all new stuff to them. I always remember that they're going to remember your first point, and they're going to remember your last point. But everything else in between, they're going to forget. They can only remember a couple things at a time. So I always realize that. So your last point better be the one that seals the deal. Now, I want you to do something here. I want you to stare at that black dot on the screen, and then move your head backwards and forwards. What do you see happening when you do that? Stare at the dot in the middle of the screen and move back and forth. What do you see? So stare at the black dot, move your head backwards and forwards. What do you see? What's happening? I'm not getting any feedback here. Circles move, exactly. The circles are moving, but are they really moving? No, but that tells you that, I mean, we are hardwired for visual stimuli. So the prettier the picture you can, and again, where you're going to see this more than what we do with 5Q is with the trip. Remember the boat story I told you? People love to see boats, and I'll give you an example of how strongly we're wired for visual stimuli. And they've looked at study after study after study of this. But one of the things that they have done is they've shown people, I think the last one I looked at is they showed people, I don't know why they chose 62, but they showed people 62 faces. 62 faces. And they went only about 2 seconds per face. They showed a face, showed another face, showed another face, showed another face, showed another face. I mean, that's how quickly they were showing faces. 62 faces. And then they went back 3 hours later and showed people the same 62 faces that quickly. Showed people the same 62 faces and said, have you seen, was this face in the list or was it not in the list? How accurate do you think people were? Do you think they were very accurate or not very accurate? We got terrible? Not. Nope, they were extremely accurate. In fact, most people out of the 62, they said the average was they only couldn't identify about 4 of those faces out of 62, which I think is extreme. That's what, 95% accurate. It's because our brains are hardwired to see pictures. They recognize those faces. The brain is hardwired visually to recognize things and incorporate it or put it into our brain lockbox very, very quickly. Now, how many if you put just 10 words, not 62 faces, but just 10 words in front of people, and show those words for 10 or for 2 seconds apiece, how many could remember those words after a minute, let alone 3 hours? Yeah, unless you were a trained memory as a specialist, you wouldn't remember any of those. Our brains are hardwired for visual stimuli, and that's one of the reasons with the TRIP program that we put I have a lot of visual stimuli going in there to help them remember the points. If you and when I was in the field, I drew tons of pictures. Anytime you can illustrate a point with a picture, you're going to be far better off at having them understand it, and more importantly, remember that point. And then, as we all know, people buy emotionally, and then they validate it intellectually. People buy emotionally, and then they'll validate it with the facts. But they buy with their gut, then they validate with their head. So that's the stimuli to the old brain. So here's the steps to neuromarketing. First of all, you want to diagnose the pain, which means you want us to diagnose the pain, or you want the client to diagnose the pain? You want the client to diagnose the pain. Oh, I got a question. Would charts be equal to pictures? It depends upon the chart. If the chart is chock full of data, no, it would not be a picture. If the chart is a simple pie graph, then that is a picture. So whether a chart is a picture or not has to do with the data trying to be communicated on that. So what did we say, guys, about how many things we should be showing clients to compare? Lots of things, or we should be showing very, very few things? Yeah, two is best. 2 is best. Anything up from that is worse. So, Steve, the answer to your question, would charts be equal to pictures? Yeah, if it was comparing how many things? 2 or 3, but not more than that. So, guys, why do you think that illustrations don't work, where you show them columns and columns of figures on proving our point? Way too many numbers. And is that visual stimuli? No, that's visual what? Noise. Is that concrete, or is that intangible? That's intangible. I mean, I could go down this whole list of stimuli and tell you that illustrations and hypotheticals do not stimulate do not meet any of the 6 stimuli of the brain. Okay, so thanks for the question, Steve. That's a good question. Steps to neuromarketing: diagnose the pain, then differentiate your claims, demonstrate your gain, and then deliver it to the old brain. So let's go through these 4 steps. So what you want to do is make sure they feel the pain, then differentiate your claim, letting them know that, hey, my solution to this pain is different from everybody else's out there. You cannot find my solution any other place. Then demonstrate how your solution works, and then make sure you're delivering it to the old brain, making sure that when you're delivering these things, you're using those 6 stimuli to the old brain. So number 1, remember, diagnose the pain. So that comes in 3 parts: intensity, timing, and awareness. So intensity, how intense do you want them to feel that pain? How intense? The more intense, the better. Why do I tell you to tell your stories in Technicolor with lots of details? I mean, again, it goes right back to the story I told you about the carpenter. If I do an outline, that's not very intense, is it? You have to make sure that people feel the pain. Paints the picture, right, Eric? Exactly. Timing. What do you think I mean by timing? This is a huge issue. If you can tap into this, it's going to be the difference between lots of money and not making lots of money. What's timing? What do I mean by that? Anybody? Okay, well, time. They're ready for you. Okay, that's a good guess, Ed. Timing is this. It's also been called scarcity. I'll tell you that when my best marketing and my high success ratio was doing Medicaid marketing. Why do you think it was doing Medicaid marketing? Why do you think Medicaid marketing was so successful for me? Fear. Fear of what? See, it's timing, guys. Do you think anybody came to my Medicaid marketing that didn't have a spouse who was near or already in a problem? That's right. They were losing all their assets, Bill. And if they didn't do something quickly, what was going to happen? Their assets were going to be gone. I didn't get anybody coming to my events or responding to my marketing that didn't already have a spouse that was in trouble or of some sort, or where they could actually see the horizon, or that their friend, neighbor, relative hadn't just had a problem with it. See, timing is the most important of all marketing, and it's also the most important of all selling, which is that if you can demonstrate to people that if they don't do something right now, there's a huge difference between doing something not doing something right now and waiting. Because if they wait, if they see that there's no problem with waiting, guess what they're going to want to do? They're going to want to wait. So if you think about it, college funding is also a great way to market. College funding is a great way to market because, like myself, I have an 18-year-old who goes to school next year. So guess what I'm worried about? How am I going to where am I going to come up with this money to put my kid through school next year? So now, unfortunately, college funding doesn't work because people like me, we're not looking to save money at this point. We're trying to figure out how we're going to spend money or how we can find free money. So college funding works at getting you in front of people, but it's lousy at selling people because once you get in front of them, they're not looking to save money or invest money. They're looking to spend money. But as far as getting attention, getting appointments, yeah, it's great because it's a timing issue. I have to figure out what I'm going to do with my kids in 6 months. Medicaid's a timing issue. What am I going to do to protect all my assets that I can see going right out the door because of my wife's needs long-term care? So timing is a huge issue. If you can show them that if they delay, it can have huge repercussions, that's a major power that you can use or leverage that you can use with a client. And the last thing is awareness. How many people, Ed says Social Security market. Social Security market is the same thing. Yeah, absolutely. That's a timing issue. Absolutely. And the last thing when it comes to feeling the pain is the awareness. How many people, when they come to see us with the 5Q system, before they go through the second meeting, are aware that they have problems? None of them. They all think they're doing fine. They all think that the guy's doing a good job for them. They all think that they're not aware of their beneficiaries being wrong. They're not aware that they're paying fees. So awareness is the other thing. You have to get them to a point where they're aware of these things. So number one, feeling the pain. It has to be an intense pain. If you can show them that the timing, that if they don't do something right now, that there's going to be big problems, and obviously you have to make them aware of that. So number two is differentiate yourself. You have to make sure that they understand that your idea is unique to everybody else out there and that you're the only one with it. Again, this ties right back to our TRIP program that we're launching here at the end of the month. The idea is unique and you're the only one out there with it. And then you want to treat your solution as an invention. That it's something that you invented. That adds to your credibility. It adds to the uniqueness. It adds to their desire for that thing. Number three, demonstrate the gain. You want to demonstrate financial gain, strategic gain, or personal gain. Any one of those things or all three are even better. Now, 4 ways to prove a gain. I want you to pay attention. This is very important. Pay attention to this. Number one, a customer story has 80 to 100% proof. So what do we call customer stories, guys? Oh, please go back to number 2. Okay, so I'm saying go back to number 2. Eric's saying go back to number 2. Just because you want to take notes, Eric, or because you have a question? So any questions or comments on number? No, it's okay. So any questions or comments as Eric's taking some notes here on making or differentiating yourself? Okay, got it. Okay, so we've gone. Okay, 4 ways to prove a gain. Customer story, 80 to 100% proof. That means that 80 to 100% of people will take that as proof that a gain works. What do we call customer stories, guys? What's another word for that? Testimonials. It's testimonials. Now, can we use testimonials? We can't get them in writing, But can we tell people stories? I mean, well, some of it, if you're an RIA, you can't get them in writing. If you're a registered rep or an insurance agent, you can get them in writing as long as they're not claiming that your rates of return and such things like that. But let's just talk about when you're in front of a client, because it'd be kind of awkward to use testimonials in front of a client. Can you use customer stories, though, when proving something? Yes. You can use what? Case studies are an excellent way. A case study is an excellent way to prove a gain. Use a case study of somebody just like those people and how you've helped them through similar problems to the people you're sitting in front of. So customer story is 80 to 100% proof. And again, how much in Technicolor do you want that story? You want that story in extreme Technicolor. You want the client to feel the pain those people had and feel the joy of the solution that they had. Demonstration, again, 60% to 100% proof-worthy demonstration on how things work. Data, look at this, data, 20 to 60%. Yeah, what do most advisors use to prove the gain? Data. In the form of what, guys? We just talked about this. In the form of what? In the form of hypotheticals and illustrations. So you're going to prove that it works. Can you prove anything works to people? No. You cannot prove anything that works. They're going to either decide, they decide for themselves whether something's going to work or not. And how they decide is based on internal mechanisms, not external mechanisms. They decide, because you know what? How many of you have been showed tons of data? I could show a bunch of people right now tons of data on why guns should be outlawed in the United States. And if you carry a gun and like guns, what would you say about that data? What would you say about that data? It's false, exactly. Now, on the other hand, what if I show somebody who's totally anti-guns the data on how safe having guns makes us? What would those people call the data? Can I change people's beliefs with data? Because I can put you in front of huge amounts of data that prove my point, and if it's not your point, what will you say about the data? It's wrong. It's false. It's blah, 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 blah. The only thing that changes people's minds, their beliefs, is this word right here. Stories. Stories. There are people there are people that are Democrats that turn to Republican, and there are people that are Republicans that turn to become Democrats. If you ask them why, they're never going to tell you because of this data. They're going to say, hey, this thing happened. The straw that broke the camel's back was this one thing, and they're going to tell you a story on what changed their beliefs and made them change. Very, very internal, intrinsic beliefs, and it was changed not by data, but by stories. Stories are what changes people's beliefs in things, not data. So quit thinking about proving things to people. Quit thinking about proving things to people with data, illustrations, numbers, facts and figures, articles. It does not work. Stories work. Demonstrations work. Vision, again, trying to show them things, prove to it on paper, that does not work. A customer story, is that something to show them on paper? Is that an article? No. It's walking them through a Technicolor movie on how this gain affected these people in a real way. Not with data, not with articles. And so when you're thinking about, when you're in front of a client and thinking about, I need to have them understand this, be thinking about these 4 ways to prove a gain. The only 2 that are 100% proof are customer story and demonstration, not data, and not trying to show them with some sort of graph, etc. So this is also answering some of that question about a graph, right? So would a graph work? Well, it depends. It depends how memorable that graph is. Because just showing it to them is not going to work. Now, of course, if you can do all 4, that's even better, right? Because then you're covering all your bases. So, and then the 4th thing to the sales process is deliver all those things to the old brains stimuli, which are self-centeredness, contrast, tangible output, end in the beginning, visual, stimuli, and emotion. So the process, here's the process. You need a grabber. A grabber means what? Grabber means get their attention. Then you want to paint them the big picture. Now, if you think about this, think about our disclosure meeting. What's our grabber at a disclosure meeting? We use this neuromarketing selling process continually in our disclosure meeting. We have them tell us in Technicolor how much they love their current thing, and then we use a phrase that's a grabber. What's the grabber? We use a phrase that's a grabber. Because they're talking about how much they love something. We're patting them on the back for why they love it, and then we use a phrase. What's the phrase? The phrase is this. And that's what good job, Eric. That's what concerns me. Because that stops the conversation. Because you're having them tell you how great having their beneficiaries right is, or having their titling right is, or having low fees is, or having whatever it is, having a variable annuity is, and then all of a sudden you say, that's what concerns me. So now we're into the selling process when we do that, because we grab their attention. Like, holy cow, how do we go from being great to saying, that's what concerns me? He's saying, I don't even have those things. The big picture. The big pictures we use a lot, as I tell people, tell you when you're explaining things to people, do we ever start with the money, or do we always start with non-financial things when we're explaining a process? We start with the non-financial. Why do we start with the non-financial first? Why do we start with the non-financial first? So that they can see the big picture. See, we want them to see the big picture first. And if you think about it, our whole disclosure process kind of revolves around this. Do I just jump in right away with the fact that their guy is screwing them? Or do I spend 40 minutes talking about non-financial things and having them start to get the big picture that, you know what, I thought my guy walked on water, but apparently he doesn't quite walk on water as much as I thought he did. He's making mistakes. He's forgetting things. He's doing it's the big picture. So you grab their attention, then it's the big picture. Then you make your claim, and we talked about how you make your claim. Let's see, because this is a minute ago. Let's see how many of you remember. What are the two best ways to make your claim? Just covered this, guys. What are the two ways? Story demo is number one. Yeah, oh, story and demo. Story and demo. You're right. Story and demo. Good job, guys. Proof of gain, handle the objections, and the close. So for the grabber, to get their attention, again, we use the phrase in this particular, in our disclosure meeting of that's what concerns me. That's our grabber. But there's lots of ways you can grab people's attention. One way is called a mini drama, and that is to walk them through a painful day in the life of a client just like them. Rhetorical questions, get them to tell you. We do that a lot, don't we? Props, any object that symbolizes a solution, that's a good thing. And the parallel story. Again, what you're going to see here is with the trip, we do all of these things with the trip. All of these things are done with the trip program. The big picture, the perfect example of the big picture is a before and after. Like if you buy workouts, the before and after workout picture. If you buy a diet, they're looking at diets, the before and after diet picture. Or plastic surgery, the before and after. Before and after is an excellent example of a big picture. The claim, we've talked about that an awful lot. Proof of gain, again, we talked about the strongest is the customer story. Very strong is the demo. Data is just okay. Using all three of these, fantastic. But if you're going to make a mistake and use one, use customer story. Use the demo. Don't just rely on the data. And again, most advisors rely on this data. Advisors are in love with data. Advisors are in love with data. Don't be. Handling objections, overcome them before they come up. Guys, how often are you surprised with an objection? Or is it, when you hear an objection, is it something you've heard a gazillion times before? How often are you surprised with an objection you never heard of before? Not very often. So if that's the case, why not just work into your whole your presentation any of the objections that could possibly come up? And that's what we've done with the 5Q system with the at the first meeting, the second meeting, in the presentation is we know what they're going to say to us, so we have them overcome the objection before they bring them up. And then the close. And I always have them repeat the close, repeat the claims in the form of an essay question. So why do you want to? Why would this make sense? Have them repeat why it makes sense in the form of an essay question. You never want to. The close should never be, so should we move forward, and have them say yes. That's worthless. Instead, you should say, what do you think we should do? And then have them tell you what they should do, and then ask them, well, why do you think that makes sense? And have them explain why. That's the close, because then it's in their head. So where do we go from here is a fantastic closing question. Not should we move forward. Okay? So any questions on this? The Neuromarketing is a fantastic read, but it's a lot of examples in theory. I've kind of boiled it down into the nitty-gritty here. But if you're ever wondering about a book on selling and marketing, it's a fantastic book for doing that. And as you notice, we use this book came out actually about 5 years after I developed the 5Q system. So, but I was pleased when I read it to see that we're doing a lot of the things naturally that they promote in there. So, with suitability issues, we have to have customers sign disclosures which file data. What's a graceful way not to get bogged down in data? With suitability issues, we have to have customers sign all the disclosures, which is filled with data. Well, again, with suitability issues, that means you've already done what? If you're to a point where you're into suitability issues, that means you're still in the selling process, or the selling process is done. So if I'm getting into suitability issues, where at the point where I'm filling out the all of the forms, that means the sale is done. Now, I do use those things as and it depends on the form that you're talking about, but oftentimes with the suitability forms, you can say that, these forms, now, do you think these forms are to protect you or the company? And a lot of times they think it's to protect the company. Say, well, if that was the case, if they're to protect the company, did filling out these forms make you feel better or worse? More anxious or less anxious? Well, they make us feel more anxious. Exactly. So do you think the company wants you feeling more anxious or wants you to feel less anxious? Less anxious. So if the company had their druthers, would they even want to have you sign these forms? No. Well, who do you think makes them have you sign these forms? Well, probably the government or the regulatory. Yeah, the regulatory agencies. So the regulatory agencies, do you think they're trying to protect the company, or do you think they're trying to protect you? Well, they're trying to protect us. Exactly. So these forms are actually holding their feet to the fire or your feet to the fire. Well, I guess theirs. Well, do you guess? And I'll walk right back through it again if they say a guess. So you have them understand that the forms that they're signing are not to protect them, the company. It's to protect themselves, and walk them through why that's the case. So then we've changed all the data into, oh, this is something that's been put in place to protect us, not them. So we've gone from talking about data to the big picture. The big picture was what? This form is holding the company's feet to the fire, not the client's feet to the fire. Does that make sense? Please go over an example of a demo. Well, I'll give you the best example of a demo, which is not in our industry. Back in the 1960s, Corning Glass came out with safety glass. And they had one rep, maybe some of you have heard it, they had one rep who sold 3 times as much as his nearest competitor across the country. How did he do that, guys? How did he do that? How did one rep, when safety glass came out, how did one rep sell 3 times as much as everybody else? A demo, right, Casey? Smashed a lot of the glass. That's right, Eric. He smashed a lot of glass. He'd walk into somebody's office with a hammer and a glass. He put it on the table, and he bam smashed it. And it showed people that it didn't smash all over the place. It all held together. So now, the next year they had him speak at the and he told everybody it was his secret. And the next year he still sold twice as much as everybody else. What did he do the second year? What did he do the second year? He still sold twice as much glass as everybody else the next year. What did he do different? He walked in and he gave the hammer to the client and said, you smashed the glass. So what's an example of a demonstration? I'll give you a great example of a demonstration that I used to use. After I couldn't understand why when I would show people how much money they could save with taxes and how much money they could save with fees. I'd show people they could save $9,000 a year between taxes and fees. And they say, wow, that's a lot, Mike. And then they do nothing. I'm like, how could I possibly show them $9,000 and them do nothing? So what I did is I went and got $3,000 cash in hundreds and fifties, put it in a cigar box, put it in my on the shelf in my office. And when I get to the point where I show them how much taxes that they're unnecessary taxes they're paying and unnecessary fees they're paying, I'd say, let's say for example it was $12,000, or let's say $4,000. So whatever that number was, I'm going to say, can I show you what that is? And they'd all look at me like, well, okay. I'd get up from my desk, I'd walk over, grab the cigar box, pull it down, and I'd pull out the wad of money. And I'd say, here's what I'm talking about. And I'd count out the bills. So if it was $4,000, and again, I only had $3,000, so I would try to put as much money on the table as possible. So if it was, if the savings was $9,000, I would say, well, here's how much money you would save. I would every, let's see, what was it, 9,000? How much should that be a month or every 3 months? My brain's not working. Somebody help me. Let me do easier math. What if it's $6,000? So I'm saving them $6,000. So I'm saving them then
$500 a month.
$500 a month. So that would be. So if I wanted to do $3,000, put as much money on the table as possible, then I would do 6 months.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. So I'd start counting out the money. I'd go 100. Would I put the whole wad there, or do you think I counted out $100 by $100? 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900. 1,000, and I keep going right up to 3,000. I say, and I would leave it there, and I'd put it right in front of them. Say that would be like somebody walking up to your door every 6 months, knocking on the door. You'd answer the door. They'd hand you that money every 6 months. Now, how hard did you work for that money? And I'd hand it to them. I'd actually pick it up then and put it in their hands and hand it to them. Say, so how much did that cost you, or how much work did you have to do to get that $3,000? Well, none. How much tax do you have to pay on that $3,000? None. So it's like somebody walking up to you every 6 months, knocking on your door and handing you that $3,000 in your hand. That's the kind of money I'm talking about. And they'd always go, so is this mine to keep? I say, absolutely. It's not that money, and that's my money. But certainly it's yours to keep if you follow through on what? Well, all the things you're talking about today. Yeah, because is that going to happen if we don't make changes? No, it's not. No, it has. Guys, all this. Guess what happened to my closing ratio when I started using real money like that? Finally, they got, because when you say you could save $6,000 a year, they're like, oh, that sounds great. But is that theoretical or is that real to them at that point? Have they been living just fine without that $6,000 at this point? Going on the vacations they want to go on to, buying the cars they want to. Life has been just fine with or without that money. It's not till I make that money real that all of a sudden they're like, holy cow, I want that money. So is that a, Dale, does that give you an idea of a demonstration? And then let's see, I had another question. Oh, Dan Rudsky wants to know what times for those of you coming out to see the training, oh, great, Dale, the training for TRIP, Missy, do you know the time and whatever the stuff on that?
Yep, and I actually answered Dan back, but yes, it's
okay, super.
3 o'clock is when the training starts. My understanding is that Allianz will be wrapping up around 2, and so there'll be a short break, and then we'll start the TRIP training at about 3 o'clock.
Where's the training?
The training is actually in a conference room at Advisors Resource, so I can get you the address and all of that. Dan, I'll just send you an email with all of the address information on it, if that would be helpful.
And those that are not going to that training, we will be doing training in February via the web for that. So, guys, I know that we talked a lot about theory today, but the reason I like to occasionally talk about the theory is I want you to understand that Jeff and I aren't just making this stuff up. I mean, what would you add to that, Jeff? Put him on the spot.
Well, yeah, just like you said, we're not making it up. We're taking all the stuff that's out there, the latest and the greatest, and we're I guess what we do really is what we do best is take it from theory to practical application. Because it's easy to say, well, get the client involved, that's how you make a sale. But what we do is we say, well, this is how you get the client involved. These are the issues you're going to talk about, and these are the questions you're going to ask. It's easy to say, well, do a demonstration or paint a picture with the story. And I guess what we do best is we say, well, here's the story that works the best. And here's a demonstration that you can do, and here's where you would do it. So we're not just making this stuff up. We're taking all the science and we're making it tangible and practical so that you guys can go out meeting with 55 to 75 and 80-year-olds and know what stories to tell, know what questions to ask, know what issues to talk about, know how to differentiate yourself, and know what pictures to paint.
I think you said it perfectly. We make it practical. We've taken it from theory and actually told you exactly what to do to make the theory work, with the exact words, phrases, stories, order that you put things. I mean, the whole kit and caboodle. Super. So any other questions, concerns before we, so I don't do these theory coaching sessions very often, but I just think it's necessary for you guys to understand we're not pulling this out of our arses. This is stuff that's been based in science. And I'll just state it. I know everybody else in the industry. And the stuff that they're schlocking out to everybody else is not science. It's based on just crap that they throw out there. If somebody's telling you how to do something, say, that's based on what? Give me the proof. Where's the research? And I guarantee you we're the only people out there that can provide the research on what we do and why it works. So, again, I appreciate you letting me at least occasionally touch on this theory, but it should give you great confidence in what we're doing is not based on wild and crazy ideas, but actually it's based on science. So any questions before I let you guys go? Restate the name of the sales book. Oh, it's, let me go back up here. It's Neuromarketing. Let's see. I have to get all the way up. Neuromarketing. Oops, and it's by, if you just type in Neuromarketing by Patrick Renvoy, or it's French, Renvoy and Christopher Morin. And it's, I think it's just called, yeah, it is just called Neuromarketing. It has a little thing underneath it, but you just type that in and those authors, you'll find it very, very easily. Contracting for TRIP. You need to have a life insurance contract with us to get to, thank you for asking that, Bill. What do you have to do to get the TRIP? Well, you have to have at least your a life insurance contract that would be TRIP qualified to work with us, and we'll get you the names of that, the choices for that after we roll it out here in February. Because obviously, if you're going to write the TRIP policies, we want you to write them through us. So it'll be just 1 or 2 life insurance policies or companies. Anything else before I let you guys go? Missy, okay, super. All right. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a fantastic week, and we'll talk to you soon.
And Michael, I'll get you that information as well. So I'll get all the info out to both you and Dan.
Super. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.